Shalom fam, want to say thank you for tuning in here, Word Made Fresh. I'm Shalom. If you're new, want to say welcome. And if you're returning, want to say welcome back. Definitely appreciate your patience. You know, we don't do long intros, have a lot of layers to uncover. So we'll probably do a couple more studies on this particular topic, but we're looking at covenants. And if you haven't watched the first one, I encourage you to go back and watch the first video in this series. But we're looking at covenants, and we're looking at them specifically because there is no deliverance outside of a covenant with the Most High Yahweh. And so we want to have a, as much as a grounded understanding of how covenants work so that we can, have a better understanding of how our deliverance works, right? And so with that being said, let's jump right into it. Last week, we covered about 5 covenants, I believe, and we looked at the common denominator in them, which is that they all consisted of conditions. And I want to correct myself and clarify that I said commands plus consequences equals conditions, but really the basis of covenants is, promises. We can't forget the promises. That's what makes them so marvelous, is the promises. And so when we talk about conditions, we're really talking about terms laid out to maintain that covenant, right? And normally those terms are by way of obedience to commands or statutes. And when you obey, you receive the promises. If you disobey or don't adhere to those instructions, then what happens is you get consequences. Right? So it's those terms that are set before the individual or the nation that says, hey, this is how you maintain the covenant. Those are the conditions. And so with that being said, I want to continue going with that thought with a conditional, unconditional covenant. We're going to get to the new covenant because we're going to determine which one that is. But we're going to look at unconditional, conditional covenants by first looking at a definition. And the definition here, I just kind of searched it up on the web. And you're going to find this definition really in theological circles, mainstream Protestant Christianity, whatever you have it. But it says this is in an unconditional covenant, Elohim's promises and obligations are absolute and unwavering, regardless of human response or behavior. This type of covenant emphasizes Elohim's sovereignty and faithfulness, as well as his desire to establish a relationship with humanity, even in the face of human failure or disobedience, right? So, unconditional covenant. Promises are obtained regardless of humanity's obedience or disobedience, right? That's what unconditional means. But as we saw when we looked in our study, that each and every covenant had some type of condition, some type of term in there that if you broke those conditions, then you broke that covenant. So I don't even like really the term, in my opinion. I don't think it's, the best of terms to describe a covenant as unconditional. Better terminology would be what the scriptures use, where it's an everlasting covenant, which is what the word really calls the covenants. They're everlasting covenants. But within those covenants, you have unconditional promises. And I think that's a better way to really coin or describe how those covenants works. They're unconditional promises. For instance, you have the Yhuh covenant, the one made with Noah, where the unconditional promise was, I'm never going to destroy the earth by flood again. And as a sign of that covenant, there will be a bow in the sky. Well, we know since humanity's been around after the flood, they've been disobedient. They disobeyed the commands and statutes within that covenant, which we saw there were commands within the Yhuh covenant that have been broken. However, the earth in its entirety still has not been flooded. It won't be flooded. And there still have been rainbows in the sky. Why? Because those were unconditional promises within that everlasting covenant. Right? So I want to turn and look at a covenant that has been deemed as an unconditional covenant. Again, remember what unconditional means. Those promises are obtained without any human obedience being necessary, right? And that's the Abarym covenant, the one made with Abraham. And I believe this one is deemed to be an unconditional covenant because what we find in Barashyth, that's Genesis chapter 15, verse 5 and 6, and I'll read it. The Most High speaking, he says, and he brought him outside and said, look now toward the Shamayim and count the stars if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. And he, talking about Abarym, he believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness, right? So when reading that passage, that's where we get the whole idea. This is a covenant of promise. This is a covenant of faith. It's an unconditional one. All Abarym had to do was believe what Yah said, or believe in Yahweh, and he received righteousness, right? And if we're not careful and we leave it at that, that's where we get this easy believism type of deliverance that the scriptures are totally, contrary to. The word says, yes, he believed in Yahweh, and yes, it was counted to him for righteousness, but we can't just stop there. We have to ask, exactly what is it that he believed, right? Because you can say, oh, believe and you get righteousness. No, what is it that he believed exactly? And so what I'm submitting is that he believed in the word of Yhuh. He believed what Yhuh said, specifically in regards to the covenant that the Most High was making with Abarym. That's what Abarym believed. So now we can say, well, what's in the covenant? We got to go read what's in the covenant. We just can't make it up. We got to follow the script. So what does it say in the covenant? And you're going to find the details of the covenant really repeated through Genesis chapter 12, all the way up to really 22, but mainly, you go to 12 to about 18, you'll find the same things repeated over and over again. I'm not going to read them all, but I'm just going to list them here. You can go back and check them out for yourself. But in Barashyth chapter 12, verse 2 and 3, chapter 13, verse 15 through 17, chapter 15, verse 5 and verse 7. And then the one where we're going to read here is in Barashyth chapter number 17. But the promises of that covenant are that Abarym will be made a great nation, that all nations will be barak in him. And then there was a land inheritance promised to him and his seed as well. Those are the promises of the covenant, right? So what we need to look at now is, yes, those things were promised to Abarym, but did Abarym have any participation in receiving those promises? Is this an unconditional promise, or are these unconditional promises, or are they conditional promises? And so let's look at chapter number 17, Barashyth chapter number 17, that's Genesis, verses 1. And this is again the Most High kind of rehashing, repeating the covenant. And it came to be when Abarym was 99 years old that Yhuh appeared to Abarym and said to him, I am Al Shaddai. And I've highlighted some words here. Walk before me and be perfect. That word perfect doesn't mean, spotless, blameless. It basically means whole, wholehearted. And I give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you. Verse number 4. As for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. So when the Most High starts to rehash this covenant with Abarym, notice in verse number 1, he starts off at the latter part. He says, listen, Abarym, here are your instructions as part of this covenant. Your instructions are walk before me and be perfect. And then the very next word is a critical one. There's only 3 letters. It's the word and. And English majors, if you're out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a conjunction. What it's going to do is going to take one independent thought and it's going to join it with another independent thought to make one complete thought. Not 2 separate thoughts, but one complete thought. That's what this speaker's intended meaning is. He wants us to understand these 2 separate thoughts and put them together as one. And here's the other thought. I give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you. What I believe the word to be telling us here is, listen, when it comes to this covenant between the Most High and Abarym, this wasn't a one-way thing. Abarym was given some instructions. His instructions were these: you got to walk before me and be perfect. And as part of this covenant, on my part, I'm going to do all these things for you, greatly increase you, make you a father of many nations. Like I said, the rest of the covenant you can read as far as the land inheritance and all those things. And the reason I believe that to be the correct interpretation is because when we get down to Barashyth chapter number 18, notice what the word says here in verse number 19. And if you know the background story, this is when Abarym, when the Most High was getting ready to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's going to disclose to Abarym what he was going to do. And he says in verse number 19, he says, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to show him what's happening. Why? Because for I have known him. Other translations say, for I know him. That's an important phrase we're going to get back to. Probably should have highlighted it. He says, so that he commands his children and his household after him. What does that mean? It means after him means to follow him, to do what he does. He's going to teach his children and his household to do what he does. Well, what is it that he does? Well, we just read what he was instructed to do, which was walk before the Most High and be perfect. But notice, to guard the way of Yhuh, walk before him, be perfect. To do righteousness and right ruling, walk before him and be perfect. And once again, here's a critical phrase. So that. See that phrase? So that Yhuh brings to Abarym what he has spoken to him. He's saying, listen, I know Abarym. He is going to do what he believes is his part of the covenant, and he's going to teach his household and his children to do the same. And the reason he's going to do that is so that I can fulfill my part of the covenant, as this is a conditional promise, so that I can bring all those things upon him that I said I was going to bring upon him. That is what we call a condition. Those are conditional promises, meaning that Abarym obeyed so that the Most High could bring on him the promises that he said he was going to bring upon him. That's what makes those promises conditional. But notice here, back in chapter 15, verse 4, where it says that he believed Yahweh and it was counted to him for righteousness. Again, the question was, what exactly did Abarym believe? He believed what the Most High said in the covenant. Well, what did the Most High say in the covenant? He said, Abarym, you do this, and I'm going to do this. That's what he believed. And so because he believed that, it was counted to him for righteousness. Well, you say, well, why was he given righteousness before he did anything? Well, because we're dealing with the Most High. We're dealing with the sovereign Most High, who knows the heart of man, who knows the type of faith or belief that men and women exhibit. He can see their hearts. And so he knew that Abarym really believed that if he did those things that the covenant said that he needed to do, then the Most High was going to do the things that he said that he was going to do. He saw that in Abarym's heart. And so basically what the Most High said, you know what? He's going to do the works, because he really believes that if he does the works, he's going to get what I promised to do him. So he believed. Therefore, he was given that righteousness, right? And, I don't think we're embellishing at all when you say that because we're dealing with the sovereign Most High, because he knew Abarym was going to actually do what he believed, he gave him that righteousness. It may be the very reason that he even chose Abarym to be the father of faith, as we call him, because he knew Abarym was going to do what he believed that he was supposed to do in the covenant to obtain those promises. I think I've overstated it, but I hope you get the point. And this is the whole idea of faith without works, or faith with works. Let's jump into James. Matter of fact, let's go to Hebrews real quick before I go to James. Look at Abarym, chapter 11, verse 8, just to kind of further emphasize the point, and then we'll move on to James. But Abarym says this in chapter 11, verse 8. By belief, Abarym obeyed when he was called out to go to the place which he was about to receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. By belief, he obeyed. That's what the word says. Back in Barashyth chapter number 12, the Most High told Abarym, get out of your father's house, go over to a land that I'm going to show you that you and your seed are going to inherit. You can go read that. Well, Abarym believed that if he got out his father's house and went to that land, then he will receive it, because that's what the Most High said. But what does that mean? It required him to get up, go out, obey, do a work. But he did that work because first he believed that if he did that work, he would get that promise. Belief with works. Let's jump into James. So James tells us exactly how that works, no pun intended. I'm going to do a little bit of reading here, so just bear with me. Verses 20, chapter number 2, Yhuh, just James, chapter 2, verses 20 through 26. The word says this. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that the belief without the works is dead? Was not Abarym, our father, declared right by works when he offered Yashar'el his son on the altar? Do you see that the belief was working with his works? And by the works, the belief was perfected, and the scripture was filled, which says, Abarym believed Elohim, and it was reckoned to him for righteousness, and he was called Elohim's friend. You see then that a man is declared right by works and not by belief alone. In the same way, was not Rahab the whore also declared right by works when she received the messengers and sent them out of the way? For as the body without the ruach, or the spirit, is dead, so also the belief is dead without works. James paints a strong analogy if we allow him to. He says, listen, if you separate the spirit from the body, then you have an incomplete, imperfect, non-functioning, not able to accomplish dead unit. It's not complete. You have two aspects of the unit, but because you haven't tied them together, then they can't function. They don't complete anything. They can't, accomplish anything. Well, he said, that's how faith and works are. If you separate works from belief, then you have an incomplete, non-functioning, not able to accomplish anything. I just calling it a unit, for sake now. They can't accomplish anything. They're not perfected. In order for this unit to be perfected, you have to take both of them and put them together, which begs the question once again, what we started with, what was it that Abarym believed? And I know I stated over and over again. Well, when James talks about belief, what is it that Yhuh is talking about? What are we believing that must be manifested in works. And we're going to get to that in later study in this series, but we're talking about the good news, the basara, the gospel message. You know, what exactly is that? Because there's a watered down gospel message that is not according to Yahushua's word, right? You know, I'll leave that there for now. But again, the whole idea is that we're talking about belief in something that requires me to do something because of what I believe. And that's what we see with the Abarym covenant. Even though it's a covenant of faith, even though it's a covenant of promise, what Abarym believed in is that if I do what the Most High said I need to do, get up and go to the land, sacrifice Yashar'el, obey him, walk perfect in his ways. I believe if I do those things based on his word, he said he'll make a covenant with me and I will receive all of these different promises. Faith or belief and works. That's how it works in the Abarym covenant. And I believe we're going to be able to apply that in the new covenant when we get to it. So we're going to stop there for now. Hopefully you got something insightful here. I know it kind of ran through that pretty quickly, but I want to have me get across that so we can get into the new covenant. That's what the plan is for the next study here. If you're new, please consider subscribing, hit the notification bell so you get the notification when the next video comes in, the next study. And as we sign off, as I always say, learn the word, live the word, and share the word. Shalom.